Okay, now we'll go to the first subtopic. The subtopic is who is a bank or who is a banker. Uh, can anyone uh, answer to me, answer to this question? Who is a banker? What is your definition to the banker? So I know there are a lot of bankers are there. So can someone reply to me, answer to me? Who is a banker? Oh, who is a bank? Or what is a bank? Can someone respond to me, please? Okay, since no one is responding, so I will go to the topic, the lecture. Uh, so before we study the banking, who is a banker? Before we answer to that question, we have to study a little bit of the banking industry, history of the banking industry in Sri Lanka. Uh, as you know, the banking industry or banking business was introduced to Sri Lanka that time in Ceylon by British people. During their colonial period, British people they introduced the banking business. Uh, in fact, they had in England they had a well-established banking system. So British came and conquered the country, and they established a government administration in the country, and they started the plantation industry. With the plantation industry, the international trade starts. So then, to cater to the plantation industry and also to the international trade, uh, there was a need for a banking system because, as you are aware, before British came into the country, we didn't have a banking system in the country. So, therefore, to facilitate to those industries for the development of the country, they established the banking system or banks in Sri Lanka. So, that is the history in brief of banking industry in Sri Lanka, how it was introduced to the country. Then uh, uh, when there was a dispute during that period, the colonial period, when there is a dispute with regard to the banking transaction or uh, uh, in between a banker and a customer, to resolve that dispute, uh, they followed the cases decided in England as an example, and also during this period they enacted an act called Bills of Exchange Ordinance. So Bills of Exchange Ordinance came into the operation of the country in 1927. The act number is, in fact, it's an ordinance number 25 of 1927. So during that period, when there was a dispute, when there is an issue with regard to the banking business or with between the banker and a customer, those matters, the court decided those matters based on the provisions of the Bills of Exchange Ordinance and also the cases decided before. Most of those cases decided in England, so they took those cases as an example because the Sri Lankan, the banking industry at that time was based on or introduced by the British people. They followed the British banking system. So that is how the banking business came into the country, and also the banking law also introduced during this period by British people. Then uh, uh, at the early stages, uh, with, as you, sorry, before that, now today, as you are aware, that we have a Banking Act, the Banking Act number 30 of 1988, so introduced by Sri Lankan Parliament. So when there is a dispute or when there is a issue, so we can refer the provisions of the Banking Act today. But as you see, the Banking Act came into operation in 1988. But the banking business introduced to the country long before, during British colonial period, even more than 100 years or 150 years before. So therefore, till the Banking Act came into operation, so the cases or the issues decided based on the Bills of Exchange Ordinance and also the cases of England and previous cases decided in Sri Lankan courts. So when you say banking business, so banking law, it it's included the Bills of Exchange Ordinance, English banking law, and decided cases in England, and also the cases decided in Sri Lankan courts are included into the banking law. So that is about the banking law, introduction of banking law to the country. Now the sub questions that that we are going to subtopic that we are discussing now is who is a bank, or what is a bank, or who is a banker. The question, is it necessary or is it important to understand who is a bank or what is a bank, who is a banker? In fact, it is very important because, as you are aware, when we start the banker-customer relationship, both parties, that is the banker and the customer, they have rights and duties under the banker-customer relationship. Those are legal rights and duties. The legal rights and duties is that if those rights are violated, if those duties are not performed, the other party can go to courts and can seek remedies against the party who has breached the contract. So therefore, it is very important to understand the parties of this relationship. So the relationship is banker-customer relationship, and the parties of the relationship, one side is the bank, on the other side, it's a customer of the bank. Now, I said it is very important to understand the legal interpretation for the word bank or banker. Who is considered as a bank under the law? So is it important? Yes, it is very important because anyone can claim, or any institution or any company can claim that they are a bank. Just because their name carries the word bank, you can't consider, or you can't name them just as a bank. For example, we have certain institutions, the word bank is in their name. CDB, Citizen Development Bank. But the word is there, but that institution, that's a company, that is not a bank. Now, a simple example, if I get a simple, very simple and common example. Now, for example, we have blood bank. That's an institution, government institution. They store blood, but nothing to do with banking business. So therefore, though they have the word, the bank in their name, they are not a bank. So when you understand or when you recognize some institution as a bank, that institution can have a banker-customer relationship with their customers. So other institutions also, they can have relationship. For example, a financial institution can have a relationship with their customers, a contractual relationship. But those contractual relationships that you can't categorize as a banker-customer relationship, those are different relationships. For example, we say a person goes to a financial institute or leasing institution or leasing company to obtain a lease facility. So then they enter into a contract, lease contract or lease agreement. So they have a contract. So for example, we take example, we say the finance. So the finance, they provide leasing facilities and customer, they take lease. When they enter, then they enter into a lease contract. So that's a legal contract. But that you can't say as a banker-customer relationship. It's not a banker-customer contract. It's a different, a commercial contract. But when it comes to bank, when a customer open an account in a bank, we have a contract, a different type of contract. Again, it's a commercial contract, but apart from that, going beyond that, it is a contract. It's a banker-customer relationship contract, a legal binding contract. So therefore, it is very important to first understand the parties of the contract. The first party, the bank. So definition, what is the definition that we can give for the bank? This matter was decided and discussed and decided in a case of the Commissioner of Inland Revenue versus Bank of Chettinad Limited in 1947. So I will tell you the facts of the case, then you will understand the importance of understanding the meaning of the word, legal meaning of the word banker. In this case, what happened during this period, this year, maybe 1946 or 47, the Inland Revenue Department made an announcement and said the banks were given a concession on income tax. So you know that when you are doing business, if you are a company or you are a bank, you have to pay income tax. So in this year, in this particular year, the Commissioner of Inland Revenue gave a concession on income tax to the banks. Now this Chettinad Bank Limited, you can see the name bank is there. So they were registered under this name, Bank of Chettinad Limited, and they carried out financial business in the country, Sri Lanka. So one of their businesses was lending money on securities, and further they accept deposits from the public customers. So they accept deposits, customers, they deposit money in Chettinad Bank of Chettinad Limited company, and the company gave loans, advances to the public customers on securities. They took mortgages and they gave loans. So what happened in this Chettinad Bank of Chettinad Limited also applied for the tax concession from Inland Revenue Department. The Commissioner of Inland Revenue Department rejected the application of Chettinad Bank of Chettinad Limited, the company, on the basis that the Chettinad Limited was not a bank. So Commissioner said, you are a finance company, you are not a bank. So therefore, you are not entitled to the tax concession because it's only given to the banks. Now, you see there is a dispute. One side, a company named Bank of Chettinad Limited says they are a bank. They are doing banking business. They are a bank. They registered as Bank of Chettinad Limited. So therefore, they say we are a bank and we are entitled for the tax concession. On the other side, the Commissioner of Inland Revenue says you are only a financial institution or financial company. You are not a bank, and therefore you are not entitled for the concession. So then dispute arise. Chettinad Limited went to courts. They filed action against Inland Revenue Commissioner of Inland Revenue, and their argument was that they are a bank, they are doing banking business, so therefore they are entitled for the tax concession. Then the court looked into the matter. Now what is the question that court has to decide? What is the issue that court has to decide? The issue is whether this company called Bank of Chettinad Limited is a bank or whether it's a financial institution. So in other words, the court has to answer the question, who is a banker? That is the thing, or that the question, that is the answer that they have to find out, the judges. So then they looked into judges, they looked into the practices, the law of the bank. So then they realized that actually they looked into what are the unique features of the banking business. Now Chettinad Limited says that we take deposits from public. All other banks also, they take deposits. So we are also taking deposit from the public. So therefore we are a bank. That's a one argument. On the other side, the other argument is that we are lending money to the public. So the banks also lend money. We also lend. So in that context also, we can be considered as a bank. So in other words, they say that we are doing banking business. Court looked into the matter, and so the lending money is not a unique feature of banking. So for example, financial institution also lend money. Then taking deposits from public is also observed not as a unique feature of banking, because as you see, the financial companies or finance companies or financial institution, they also obtain deposit from public. So therefore, it also cannot be considered as a unique feature. So then ultimately, court observe a unique feature of banking. That is, only the banks are maintain current accounts for their customers. No one else other than a bank, licensed bank, can maintain current accounts for their customers. So then, based on that, the court decided the Chettinad Limited is not a bank because they are not maintaining current accounts for their customers, so they are not entitled for the tax concession. So the definition given in this case, a judgment in this case, bank means a institution who maintains current accounts for their customers. Now you compare this judgment with today's banking practice. Now can you accept this judgment as it is today? Now you see, we have special banks. They don't maintain current account for their customer. They are not allowed. Some commercial banks, basically all commercial banks, they can maintain current accounts. And also government banks, some government banks also they also maintain current accounts for their customers. However, as per this definition, special banks who are not maintaining current accounts cannot be considered or cannot be categorized as banks. So therefore, in that context, today's context, this judgment we can't accept as it is. However, this is one of the most important case decided on the question who is a banker or what is a bank. So therefore, you must remember this case and its judgment. Now we'll go into the next slide. As I told you, the first legislature or the enactment introduced to the country with regard to the banking business is the Bills of Exchange Ordinance. The Bills of Exchange Ordinance number 25 of 1927. Now we'll see whether there is a definition given in the Bills of Exchange Ordinance for the word banker or bank. So that section 2 of the Bills of Exchange Ordinance gives a very broad definition to the banker. So banker, it says the banker includes a body of persons, whether incorporated or not, who carry out banking business. This is the definition given in the Bills of Exchange Ordinance. What is it? A body of persons, whether incorporated or not, who carries on banking business. When you analyze this definition, you can compare this definition with today's context. This definition says a body of persons, whether incorporated or not. That means whether you are incorporated as a company or not, you can carry out banking business. So as per this definition, you need not to register a company to be a bank. Even a partnership, a proprietorship, even a society can be a bank, can start banking business as per the definition of Bills of Exchange Ordinance. So the first two parts says a body of person, whether incorporated or not. Then the third part of the definition say who carry on the banking business. The important thing here is the banking business is not defined in Bills of Exchange Ordinance. So therefore, there is a gray area again. So what is banking business? For the definition, we say the bills of exchange ordinance says who carry on the banking business. Whether incorporated or not, a body of person who carry banking business is a bank. So the word banking business is not defined. So then it's not clear. So therefore, the definition given in the bills of exchange for the word banker is not a clear, a precise definition. Then we'll see what is the definition or what is the situation after the Banking Act came into operation. So as I told you, the Banking Act came into operation in 1988. The legislature, the parliament introduced this act in 1988. The act number is number 30 of 1988. So here in this act gives a clear definition to the word bank and banker and the banking business. It's clearly defined. So therefore, today's context, we don't have to bother about the bills of exchange ordinance or the previous decided cases because there is a definition in the Banking Act for the word bank. As per the section 2, subsection 1 of the Act, Banking Act, it says only incorporated companies are allowed to do banking business. So therefore, this is very important. Today, the definition given in the bills of exchange is no more valid because the bills of exchange ordinance say any person, whether they incorporated or not, they can carry out banking business. The Banking Act says only incorporated companies are allowed to do banking business. So therefore, unless you are registered as a bank, you are not allowed to do banking business. So therefore, the first requirement or for the first requirement that you have to be a company. You have to incorporate a company. So as you are aware, now the companies are incorporated under the provisions of Companies Act. So first of all, you have to register a company under the Companies Act. Then the second part, to do banking business, the company has to obtain a license. License to be obtained to carry out banking business. So as you are aware, the license are given or license are issued by the central bank. More precisely says, the Monetary Board of Central Bank issues banking licenses. So those are the two requirements to become a bank or categorized as a bank or defined as a bank under the Banking Act. Number one, that it has to be an incorporated company. Number two, that company has to obtain a license from the central bank to carry out banking business. So then you can name that company as a bank. So in today's context, if there is any issue before courts to decide who is a banker or who is a bank, it's very easy. You don't have to go to the cases decided in England or provisions of the bills of exchange ordinance. Simple. If you are a bank, you have to be a registered company. So then you can produce the registration of the company. Number one. Number two, you have to obtain a license to carry out banking business. So then if you have the registration, company registration certificate, and if you have the license issued by the central bank, then you are a bank. You don't want to prove anymore. So that is the definition given in the bill, as given in the Banking Act for the or the requirements under the Banking Act to become a bank. Now, apart from these provisions of the Banking Act, other than the private banks that you aware, there are state banks. For example, Bank of Ceylon, People's Bank, NSB, right? Those are some state banks. Important thing here is those state banks are not established under the Companies Act or under the Banking Act. They are established, they have been established by the legislature by a separate act or a gazette. Now, for example, the Bank of Ceylon, they have an act called Bank of Ceylon Act. So the government has established the Bank of Ceylon as a state bank by passing an act in Parliament. People's Bank same, NSB same, likewise some state banks are there. They are governed by their own act. So apart from that, the bank provisions of the Banking Act also apply to them. So mainly that, if I summarize this, you have to remember the today's context. We don't have to bother about the definition given in the Bills of Exchange Ordinance or the cases decided before. To decide who is a bank, you have to see the provisions of the Banking Act. So if you have obtained a banking license and if you are registered as a company, then you are a bank. You can be categorized as a bank. Apart from that, we have state banks, special banks introduced by or established by an act of Parliament. So those are the state banks established under legislation. So that is the summary of the topic banker, the subtopic banker. So if you have any questions that you can raise now before I go to the next slide. Okay, then I'll go to the next slide. Now we understood what is a bank, who is a banker. Then if you go into the previous slide, also it says under the Banking Act also it says that you have to be a company and you have to register under the Banking Act and also, sorry, under the Companies Act. Then you have to obtain a license from the central bank to carry out banking business. So then the question is, next question arises is, what is banking business? Right? Unless you have a license to carry out banking business, license issued by the central bank, you are not allowed to do banking business. Then the question is, what is banking business? What do you understand by banking business? So we'll see what is that. What do you mean by banking business? So that there is a definition in the Banking Act for this. What is banking business? Section 86 of the Banking Act says the banking business. What is banking business? I have divided this into two. You see, number one, a part of business is you receive funds. The bank can receive funds. So banks are allowed to receive funds. Receiving funds from public through the acceptance of money deposit. So the banks can receive funds from the public as deposits under a condition. What is the condition? payable on demand. So the banks, they take money or take deposits from the public with a condition. The condition is that when the customer demand, that bank has to pay the money, return the money on demand. Then the second part of this, now when we say business, business means that you generate income. It's an activity to generate income. So then when we say the banking business, the banks then has to generate income. It is a business. So we said from one side under the banking business that we obtain or we take deposit from the public, and we promise them to pay interest also. We say we take 1 million from a depositor, and we agree to pay 10% per annum per year. So at the end of the year, we have to pay 1.1 million to the customer, right? So then how we are going to pay interest? To pay interest to the customer, we have to generate income. So we have to generate income. How do you generate income? That is the second part of banking business. The definition says, use the funds. Funds means that the deposit that you took from the public, you can use to these activities. What are those activities? For advances. So you can lend the money, the deposit money, to the public again. Now you take deposit from the public, you agree to pay 10% to the customer annually or at the maturity, and you use that funds to lend money to the public again. So you lend as a loan. So we say now you lend at the rate of 15% per annum. You took deposit to pay interest 10%, and you lend money to the public, that 1 million again for 1.5 million, 15% per annum. So then what will happen at the end of the year when the customer repay the loan, you get 1.15 million, 11 lakhs 50,000. So because the customer pay 15% per annum for the loan, then from that income, 150,000, the income, you have to pay the depositor 10%. Right? Then that additional 5% or 50,000 rupees that you earn is your profit. So that is why we say banking is a business. It's a profit-making business or income-generating activity. How do you generate income is the question. So you can lend money to the public. What are the other activities or other businesses that you can involve? You can investigate money deposits. You can investigate in the share market, or you have a treasury department. They decide where to invest money. You can invest money in government bonds. Likewise, you can invest money. So then you get a return. That is your income. Number two. Then number three, for any other operation other than, either authorized by law or customary banking practices. For any other operation authorized by law or customary banking practices. You can lend money You can invest money, or you can do any business, any activity, any operation using the funds of the public, as long as that activity has been recognized under the law, authorized by law, or authorized by banking practices. Banking practices. So therefore, basically, apart from lending money and investments, the bank can do any activity, any business, as long as that business is recognized and by law. So in other words, other than illegal activity, the banks can utilize depositors' money for any legitimate business to generate income. So that is the definition for the banking business given in the Banking Act, section 86. So then we'll go to the next topic, that is, who is a customer? Now, the first topic we discuss who is a banker, right? And we identified the definition, we got the definition, and we realize the provisions of the Act, Bills of Exchange Ordinance, and also Banking Act. And now we can identify a bank. If someone claims that they are a bank, we know how to identify. What is the definition? Then we now know what is banking business as per the section 86 of the Banking Act. Now the question is, the next question or the subtopic is, who is a customer? Who is a customer? Who can be considered as a customer of a bank? Now again, as we aware now, when it comes to this question, we can look into the provisions of Bills of Exchange Ordinance. We have decided cases, and we have Banking Act. So those are the main areas that we looked into when we have to decide who is a customer. Then the Bills of Exchange Ordinance, section 82 and 83 of the Bills of Exchange Ordinance, mention the term customer. So first we looked into the provisions of Bills of Exchange Ordinance, and we'll see whether there is a definition for the word customer. In section 83 and 82 and 83 of the Bills of Exchange Ordinance, it only mentioned the word customer. The word is not defined, but there's no definition. Word is there's no definition. Then, since there is no solution in the Bills of Exchange Ordinance, we'll see whether there is any definition given in the Banking Act to the word customer. So, importantly, there is no statutory definition given in the Banking Act also. The word is used, but it is not defined. It's not defined. Now we have a problem. Bills of Exchange Ordinance does not provide a definition for the word customer. Banking Act does not provide a definition for the word customer. So then how do we decide, or how do we identify the customer of a bank? Then the third option that we have to look into the cases, decided cases. So therefore, we have to rely on the judicial decisions, cases. When there is a dispute, when a person say that I am a customer, or when a person say that I am not a customer, to decide that there's no provision given in the Bills of Exchange Ordinance, there's no provisions in the Banking Act, so therefore we have to rely on the cases, judicial decisions, cases, decided cases. So now we have to see what are the cases, or how the court has decided this fact, who is a customer of a bank. We'll see, we'll go to the next topic, next slides, and see who can be considered as a customer of the bank. Now, think a situation like this, right? We say, now we take a practical situation. We say a person wants to obtain a loan from a bank. He wants to obtain a loan, but he has not opened an account with the bank. He has an idea to obtain a loan, but he has not opened an account. Now, can we consider that person as a customer of a bank? Why I say this? When we say customer, the bank customer is different from the shop customer, customer of a shop. The banker customer relationship is different from the other contracts, other commercial contracts. So therefore, we have to correctly identify the bank, customer of a bank. Who is a customer? At what point he become a customer of the bank is the issue. Now, for example, we take a situation where a person wants to open an account. He goes to the bank. What is the procedure we follow? Right. First of all, we have to we identify the customer by checking his identity card and all. Then thereafter, if you decide to allow him to open the account, you ask him to fill a mandate. Then you take a signature card also. Now the question is whether once he filled in the mandate, whether he is a customer of the bank. Number one. Now we say, now this person, he filled the mandate and he gave to the bank, and bank approved the request and allowed him to open an account. So he opened an account now. He opened the account. But has not done any transaction, not deposited money, right? Not withdrawn. So no transaction in the account, but he has an account. The bank has allocated the account number. So therefore, can we consider him as a customer of the bank? In other words, is it necessary to do transaction in the account to consider a person as a customer of the bank? Right? Those are some concerns that we have to answer, issues that we have to answer. To answer that concerns or issues, that we should understand who is a customer of the bank. So there, I said that we have to rely on the cases decided before. So first case that you have to remember, this is very important for your exam also. When you define the customer, you can't define the customer without these decided cases. Unless you read, unless you understand, and unless you remember these cases, that you will not be able to get marks, full marks, if you get this question. Right, the first one, the case, decided case is Great Western Railway versus London and County Banking Limited. As you see, it's an English case. It's an English case decided in England. So how can it then applicable to us? As I told you before, the banking industry introduced to the country by British people, and we followed their practice of banking practices and also their cases. So therefore, a case decided in England can be a part of a Sri Lankan banking law. What happened in this matter? A judgment says in this judgment, Great Western Railway versus London County Banking Company Limited. The question was, who is a customer of a bank? Who can be considered as a customer of the bank? So judgment said, customer is a person who holds any type of account with the bank. So court said, to become a customer, you have to open an account. You have to open an account in a bank. Otherwise, you are not a customer of the bank. Now, now we take an example. We say a person wants to obtain a loan, but he doesn't have a he doesn't have an account in the bank, but he submit a loan application. And the loan application, we say, processed by the bank office management and approved the loan also. Not dispatched. Customer does not have an account with the bank yet. Now, can you tell or can you consider that person as a customer of the bank? Or in other words, whether there is a banker-customer relationship between the applicant and the bank. So as per this case, Great Western Railway case, it is very clear, unless you open an account, that person cannot be considered as a customer of the bank. So therefore, customer, to consider a person as a customer, that person has to hold any type of account, whether it could be a current account, savings account, fixed deposit, could be a loan account, credit card, whatever. If that customer maintains an account with the bank, then only that we can consider that party as a customer. And then once he opened an account with the bank, he become a customer, and between the bank and the customer, this banker-customer contractual relationship starts. Right? That is number one, case number one. Then the next question is, mere opening an account is whether it's sufficient to become a customer, or does he has to do transaction in the account to become a customer? So that is the second question arose. That question was discussed in this case, Commissioner of Taxation versus England, Scottish and Australian Bank Limited. In this matter, it was decided, what is the decision? Immediately after opening the account holder become a customer. Immediately after you open the account, you become a customer of the bank. Whether the account operated or not is immaterial or immaterial, not necessary to maintain or do transaction in the account. So just opening an account is enough. Then we have a question, at what point you consider the account is open? Now when a customer or other person comes to open an account, he has to fill a form. Then after he fill the form, he give that form to the the teller or front office. Then they verify certain things, then they put into the approval of the next level of the management. When they approve, only the customer can open the account. So then the question is, at what point that we consider the account is open? Whether it is necessary to deposit money, or whether you can consider a person as a customer of the bank when he gives an application to open an account. So this case is very important. It very clearly says immediately after opening the account, he become a customer. The second question is, at what point that we consider the account is open? So then answer to that question is immediately after the bank allocate a number to the account, then it considered as an account open. Account is open. So then banker customer relationship start at that point. That is commissioner of taxation versus English, Scottish and Australian bank case. And the next question is very important point, which says, that is Wood versus Martin's case, very important. So you have to remember this case, Wood versus Martin's. What is the decision of this case? It says, when a person used to deal with a bank without an account, if you get this part of this question note, when a person used to do dealings with a bank without an account. So as per the Great Western Railway judgment, if he has not opened an account, he is not a customer. He is not a customer of the bank. Once he opened the account, any type of account, then he become a customer. Now, what does this says? Wood versus Martins. When a person used to deal with a bank without any account, and if he open an account later, then he become a customer. As you know that once he open an account, he become a customer. But important point here is, he become a customer of the bank from not the date that he opened the account, from the date he first dealt with the bank. That is very important. Wood versus Martins. I will explain you this, otherwise sometimes you may not understand what this is. We say a person A, he deals with the bank without an account, no account. He deals with the bank without any account. So we say now in 2000, we say 2001, he deals with the bank. But he doesn't have an account with the bank. So therefore, there's no banker-customer relationship. There's no banker-customer relationship here. Now remember, a bank can have a contract with another person which is not a banker-customer relationship contract. For example, we can enter into a bank and enter into a agreement with a service provider, with an IT company, with a janitorial service providing company, so that they can have a contract. But those contracts you can't categorize as banker-customer relationship contracts. So then we say now this person, since he doesn't have a contract account here, he is not. There's no banker-customer relationship between A and the bank. We say now this A, he opened an account with the bank. We say in 2015, right? 2015, he opened an account. Now, as per the Great Western Railway judgment, as soon as he opened the account, banker-customer relationship starts. Banker-customer relationship starts. As per the Wood versus Martins, this is very important. This is the important point in the Wood versus Martins case. Once he opened the account in 2015, a contractual relationship starts between A and the bank, which is called banker-customer relationship, and it starts from not the date that he opened the account, that is 2015, but from the date that he first dealt with the bank. So therefore, when a customer opened an account in 2015, if he has dealt with the bank previously, the banker-customer relationship starts from this point, 2001, not from 2015, where he opened the account. So that is the judgment, or the important point decided in Wood versus Martins case. Then we'll go to the next one. This is another important point that you have to remember. One bank can be a customer of another bank. Why it is important? Because the name of this contract, or the nature of this contract, is banker-customer relationship contract. When we say banker-customer relationship, there's a misunderstanding, right? The people believe, they think, in the banker-customer relationship contract, always one side there has to be a bank, the other side there has to be another party who is not a bank, like a company or individual, or right? It is not the case. One bank can open an account in another bank. If they open an account, then that relationship between these two banks is also a banker-customer relationship. For example, we'll take real example. We say HNB opens an account at commercial bank. Now there is an account. The account holder is HNB, that they have opened the account in commercial bank. Now there's a relationship between commercial bank and HNB. So you say both ends, there are banks. From this end, commercial bank, the other end, HNB. So the question is, what is this relationship? How do you name this relationship? Do you name that as a bank-bank relationship? It's not that. It is again a banker-customer relationship. Who is the bank? Commercial bank. Who is the customer? Customer is the person who has opened an account in the bank. So HNB has opened the account in commercial bank. So therefore, HNB here is the customer. Between commercial bank and HNB, there's a banker-customer contractual relationship. That is number 4 under this topic. Then the next one, even after the account is closed or seized, the bank has a duty of secrecy. That we are going to discuss later, the duty of secrecy. So for the time being, just remember, even the account is closed or seized, that bank has a duty of secrecy. Then the point number 6, even the account is overdrawn, the account holder continues to be a customer. This is another misunderstanding that we have as bankers. We sometimes think a person can be considered as a customer when he is maintaining his accounts to the satisfactory of the bank. It is not the case. When it comes to law, as long as he maintains the account, as long as that person maintains the account with the banker-customer relationship is there. The banker-customer relationship is there. So the banker-customer relationship comes to end if the customer or the bank close the account. When the account is terminated, the banker-customer relationship comes to end. Otherwise, it prevails. Whether it's overdrawn, whether the customer has defaulted, whether there is a balance in the account, whether there is a OD balance in the account is immaterial. As long as the account is there, the banker-customer relationship is there. So those are the important points with regard to the customer. If I summarize, there's no definition for the word customer in the Bills of Exchange Ordinance. There's no definition in the Banking Act. So therefore, when there is a dispute, the court has to decide when there is a dispute with regard to the customer, the word customer, interpretation of the customer. So then that has to be decided based on the cases decided before. So there are 5 cases, there are 4 cases that we discuss and some legal points we discuss, how to identify a customer. So that is the other party of the customer, other party of the banker-customer relationship. One side the bank, the other side the customer, and they are doing banking business. So that is the general idea of banker-customer relationship. If you have any questions up to now that you can ask, otherwise I'll go to the next slide. Now we are going to discuss the relationship between the bank and the customer. Now we said, as per the Great Western Railway judgment, when a customer opens an account, banker-customer relationship starts. Banker-customer relationship starts. What is this relationship? What is the type? What is the nature of this relationship? Is it just a commercial relationship? Is it a social relationship? Is it a legally valid relationship? So what is the nature of the relationship is the question. So answer to that question, the banker customer relationship is a contract. Banker customer is a contractual relationship. So it's a contract. The banker customer relationship creates number of legal rights and duties. When you say it's a contract, under a contract, you know, the parties of the contract, they are bound by the contract. So they have rights and duties. Who are the parties of the banker customer relationship? One side is a bank, the other side is a customer. They have a contractual, legally enforceable contractual relationship between them. So therefore, when you create a contract, you know that parties get rights under the contracts. They have rights, right? They can exercise. On the other hand, you get obligations also, duties. So basically, under under this banker customer relationship, it creates number of legal rights and duties to both parties, to the banker and the customer. And the other important thing is most of these conditions are, or rather rights and duties are implied rights and duties. Implied means it's not nothing in writing. The duties, most of the duties and the responsibilities of a banker and the customer is not written. It's not written. It's implied. It's implied. The banker and the customer have duties on and obligations on each other. What does it mean? Once a person open an account in a bank, he become a customer. Or rather, they create a relationship, bank and the customer. What is that? What is the nature of that contract? It's a contractual relationship. That relationship is a contractual relationship. Then if it is a contract, the parties, they get rights and duties. Rights and duties. Now, when we say rights and duties of parties, one party, if they have a right to exercise, that is an obligation or duty of the other side. Right? So therefore, the banker and the customer both, they have their rights and their duties under the banker-customer contractual relationship. Okay, now after this, we are going to discuss the rights and duties of the banker under the banker-customer relationship. So the banker's rights and duties under the banker-customer relationship. That is the next topic that we are going to discuss now. If you have any questions, you can ask, or otherwise I will go to the next slide. We'll see what are the rights that banker can exercise, or rights that you can enjoy under the banker-customer contractual relationship. First right of the bank has a right to charge interest and fees. The bank is allowed to charge interest and also fees. You can charge, right? So that is not written in anywhere. That's an implied right that you have. The bankers, now for example, we say we grant an overdraft facility, casual overdraft, without any written contract. We just allow the customer to overdraw the account and pay checks. So then the account get overdrawn. So then, as you are aware, when there is a OD balance, the bank charge interest. Bank charge interest. Now, where does it say so? It's not written in anywhere. However, as a banking practice, this has been established, and also court has accepted this duty, this right of the bank as a duty of the customer. What is the right? The bank can charge interest. The customer has to pay interest for the money obtained from the bank. Not only that, the bank can charge fees also. Fees means that when you provide a service to the customer, you can charge a fees for that. That is called fees. Second topic, or second right that a bank can exercise against the customer, right to change interest rate. The bank can change the interest rate. When we say you have a right, the bank has a right to change interest rate. You remember that we have several types of accounts. We have savings account, we have current accounts, we have investment accounts, fixed deposits, right? In a savings account, the bank pay interest to the customer. Bank pay interest. That interest rate can be changed by the bank time to time, depending on the market condition. Bank can change. Now, customer. Now, for example, we say now when you put money into a savings account, at the end of the month, interest accumulate, and the customer get interest. We say this year we pay. This month we paid 7% per annum interest, and next month we pay a lesser amount, because whatever the reason, that bank interest rate may have come down. Now next month we pay only 4% interest. So the question is whether the customer can argue that he can demand the same interest for the next month also. So the answer is very clear. Bank has a right to change interest rate depending on the market condition. Depending on the market condition. Then the third one, the right to combine accounts. The bank has a right to combine accounts. What do you mean by combine an account? Combining of account and setting off are two different things, right? Are two different things. Now, I will explain this. Now we say a customer, one customer is maintaining more than one accounts in a same bank, in a one bank. One customer maintains accounts in one bank, but different accounts, different number of accounts in the same capacity. So what are the conditions? One customer, more than one accounts, maintained in the same bank, in the same capacity. Then in a situation like that, the bank can combine the account of the customer without the consent of his consent, right? So we say there's a customer A who is maintaining a savings account, who has a current account, and who has another savings account. Likewise, one customer is maintaining more than one account in the same bank. In the same bank. In a situation like that, at any given time, the bank is entitled to combine these accounts. Combine these accounts. So that is called combination or combine of accounts. Right to combine accounts. Right? Then the next one is right to set off. Right to set off. Now, what does it mean? Right to set off means that bank gets a right to recover dues from the customer without his consent by setting off the dues against another money in another account of the same customer. Now I will explain this with an example. Right to set off is like this. We say customer A is maintaining two accounts. Account number 1 and account number 2 in the same bank. We say HLB is maintaining two accounts in the same bank. Right? We say this is a savings account. Savings account. So in this account, he has, we say, 3,000 rupees in this account. This is a current account and it has an overdue balance of 2,000 rupees. Right? Now, under the right to set off of the banker, or banker's right to set off, to recover this 2,000 rupees, the bank can set off. So bank can set off this figure from the customer. Then thereafter, so the balance will be 1,000 in this account. This is called right to set off. Without the consent of the customer, even without his permission, the bank can set off this money, 3,000 rupees, against 2,000 minus, that is OD, and set off and recover the dues. That is called right to set off. Right to set off. Right to set off means that the customer, the bank does not want to obtain the customer's approval or consent. You can exercise your right under this. And the fifth one is lien rights. Lien rights. What does it mean? Lien right means it's another right given to the banks under the banker-customer relationship. What is that? Lien right means the bank has a right to retain the goods or the properties of the customer until he settles the total dues to the bank. Again, I will tell very slowly, right? You must listen very carefully. Lien right means the bank has a right to retain the goods, securities of the customer until he settles the total dues to the bank. So now I will explain what it is, then you will understand with an example. Please take this scenario. We take this scenario, right? We say we have a customer A has obtained a loan. Loan number one, we say 1 million. We say in 2018, he obtained this loan from HNB. As a security for this loan, we'll take another. Then he obtained another loan. We say loan number 2. We say 2 million. In 2020 from HNB, same bank. We say this facility is secured by a mortgage. We have a mortgage bond. Now the customer settled the loan number 1. He paid loan number 1, but his second loan, that is 2 million loan, is in arrears. Now what is the situation? When a person settles the loan, bank has to release the securities. You can't keep the mortgage with you. You have to cancel the mortgage and you have to return that to the customer to get registered. However, in a scenario like this, even though one loan is paid, the bank can retain the security, that is the mortgage, until he settled the second loan or paid the second loan also. That is called lien rights. Right to retain the securities or goods of the customer until he settled total dues to the bank is called right of lien rights or right of lien. So then the sixth one is right to close account. The bank has a right to close the customer's account without his consent, without his approval. Right? So that is a right that bank can exercise. You don't want to get if you want to close an account of the customer, you don't want to get his approval or consent. The bank has a right to close the account. So you can use your right or you can exercise your right and close the account without getting permission from the customer. So those are some important rights that bank exercise against the customer. So you may remember these rights. Very important for the exam and also when you are doing day-to-day banking businesses. Then very important point under the banker-customer relationship, we are going to discuss the duties of the banker. So previous slide we discussed what are the rights that you can exercise against the customer. The banker's right that they can exercise against the customer. Now what are the duties? Duties mean the banks is obliged to follow these duties or meet the duties, honor the duties to the customer. First one, the primary obligation or most important duty of the bank is the receive money, the bank obliged to receive the money and collect bills of the customer. So if you, in other words, if you allow a customer to open an account, you are obliged or you are bound to receive money to the account so the customer can deposit money, or even a third party can deposit money to the account. So you have to receive that money, you have to collect that money. That is one. Number two, the other part of that is and collect bills for the customer. So if it is a current account, if customer get checks, so customer can deposit those checks to his savings, rather his current account. That is a right of the customer, and it is a duty of the bank. So bank has to obey the duty. Second one, the duty of the bank, second duty, provide banker's opinion. The banker has to provide banker's opinion. So this is another important part. The bank could provide a status report on their customers. The status report gives the general indication of the financial status, business integrity of the customer. Right? So bank is duty bound to provide this opinion. Again, it calls banker's opinion. Under the banker's opinion, the banks are not allowed to give details or information of the customer. If you provide information, details of the customer, then it could be a breach of duty of secrecy. Under this right to provide banker's opinion, the bank can provide only an opinion of the customer. Nothing else. You can't give information. So therefore it is very important. The status reports gives a general indication of the financial status of the banking industry or of the customer. So that is what is expected. Okay, I will explain what is a banker's opinion. Then you will understand. With an example I will give you, then you see the difference between the banker's opinion and the duty of secrecy, right? We say we'll take two banks. We say we have HNB and we say we have commercial bank. Commercial bank and HNB. We say commercial bank, they have a customer. Sorry, HNB, they have a customer A. Commercial bank, they have a customer. We say is B. We say these are businessmen. A wants to invest, we say 250 million rupees in B's business. A is an investor. He wants to invest money in B's business. B has a business. Now, before A invests money in this business, he wants to get an idea about the business of B. So no one will just put money into a business unless you have an idea, unless you have information of B's financial situation. So like A wants that information, but he can't obtain that information directly. So what he can do, A can ask or seek an opinion, banker's opinion of B. So therefore, So A can ask an opinion from his bank, that is HNB. Then HNB will get this opinion from commercial bank. So commercial bank will provide the opinion to HNB. The HNB will provide this opinion to their customer A. Again, remember, this is an opinion. Banker's opinion. Under the banker's opinion, the bank cannot divulge information. Instead of that, the commercial bank, they can provide an opinion about their customer's financial status. So I have given here some examples for the opinions, general opinions. You can see in these opinions, no information is given, right? No figure is mentioned, right? It says first one, for example, if you take the first one, it says respectable and trustworthy and considered good for your figure and purpose, right? What is that? The opinion says a respectable customer, trustworthy customer, consider good for your figures and purpose. That means, what is the figure? Figure is 250 million. A is going to invest in this business. Purpose, investment. So that is an opinion given by the commercial bank. If commercial bank provide an opinion like this, so it says they are providing this opinion about their customer's financial status, that is B. So they say B is a good customer, respectable customer, trustworthy, and considered good for your figure. What is the figure? You are going to invest 250. So he has a good business. So 250 million investment will be okay. So that they have indicated in their opinion. And the purpose to invest money, this is a good business. So based on this opinion, A, the investor can decide whether he is going to invest money or not. So I have given here 3 types of opinions that bank can provide. What I want to tell you here, very important point is that you can't divulge information under the banker's opinion. For example, you can't say that our customer is maintaining a current account and it has only 10 million balance, or it is overdrawn. So this is not an opinion. That is very clearly providing information. Oh, that is a breach of duty of secrecy. So therefore, it's very clear, you have to be very clear what is opinion, under opinion what you can provide. So only the general opinion that you can provide, nothing else. No data, no figures that you can mention. So that's very important. Then another important thing that you have to remember, what is the liability of the bank manager when you are providing opinion? It's a duty of the banker to provide banker's opinion. So what is your liability when you provide opinion as a bank manager? So if you provide a favorable opinion, right? If it is too favorable, misrepresentation or negligence opinion, then third party can claim damages. What does it mean? Now we'll say, right, this business is not a very good businessman. He has a small business. Compared to his business, this investment is very high, right? So recently he is not doing well, but commercial banks provide type 1 opinion. What is that? Trustworthy, reliable, trustworthy, and good for your figure. So that means that they recommend, in their opinion, for the investment. That is a favorable opinion to their customer, but wrong opinion. Wrong opinion. So based on this opinion, the A will invest money in this business. So definitely that A will lose money. So in a situation like this, if it is a negligent or misrepresentation opinion, the A can sue commercial bank who provide that opinion. They can ask this money as a damage. So very important. That is favorable opinion, right? Then if you provide unfavorable opinion, what will happen? Right? We say now this B has a good business. We say his turnover is 500 million per year, right? He's doing very well. His business is growing. It's a very good place to invest. However, whatever the reason, commercial bank provide type 3 opinion. That is, they say like this. Respectable, trustworthy, but has a recently opened an account with us, and we cannot speak for your figures. That we is doing business or banking with commercial bank more than now 20 years, but commercial bank say recently opened account, so therefore we can't say anything about the investment. So the bank manager think, why I get involved in this matter, so I will provide opinion like this, and he says it's a recently opened account, so therefore I can't say anything. So that type 3 opinion provide. Now this is unfavorable to their own customer, so it is not a correct opinion. So misrepresentation and unfavorable. So if A get an opinion like that from commercial bank, A will not invest money in this business. So A will not invest. So B will be the customer of commercial bank, will lose the investment, the money. So in a situation like this, B can sue their own bank and ask for damages. So therefore, when you are providing a bank manager or banker, when you are providing banker's opinion, you have to remember this. It is a duty under the banker-customer relationship. That means that when a customer requests an opinion, you are duty bound to provide it. You can't say no. Number one. Number two, it is when you are providing an opinion, it is only an opinion. It has to be an opinion. You can't provide any information. No figures that you can include in the opinion. If you provide that any information, that could be a breach of confidentiality. Then you have to pay damages to your to the account holder. Number 3, that always that you have to provide honest, correct opinion. Honest, correct opinion. If you provide wrong opinion, either the third party or your own customer can sue you. So therefore, those are the things that you have to remember. That is the liability of the bank when you are providing opinion. So with this, I will wrap up today's the lesson. Next week, Saturday, we start at 1 o'clock and we'll have a 2 hours session, and we'll try to finish the other topics by next week. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, you can ask now. Up to now, if you have any questions. Okay, if you don't have questions, then we'll stop at this point. So next day that we'll start from here, number 3, duty to honor the checks. From there onwards, that we will start. You have notes, you can read notes and be ready for the next one. Then it will be easy you to understand. And thank you very much for participation today. We'll meet on next day.